Hello people, this is the Union Tapes episode number 30, and this episode is with Kurt Schmidt of Standard Bike Co fame. Kurt founded Standard with Rick Moliterno and Bill Nitschke in the early 90s when BMX was pretty much dead. It was one of the brands that brought it back out of the doldrums, back and up to date, and many new ways of riding and new ways of making bike parts, and was one of the core brands of the day. We go right back to Kurt's beginning when he started out BMX racing in the first BMX boom of the 80s. Find out all about the Midwest BMX scene, and how the many pieces of this puzzle fit in. Also, there's a lot of tricks with Kurt's name on that many people out there probably aren't aware of, because I know I wasn't. So there's a lot to learn in this one. It's an enjoyable journey. So get it down, yeah. So yeah, just give us a little brief history of born and raised, like interests as a kid, like where you grew up, just sort of a bit of background.
Sure, yeah. So I grew up in Minnesota, outside of Minneapolis, north of it, and my father was a minister and also ran a camera repair business and also built a couple of his own planes. And my mom was pretty much stay at home. She was a lunch lady for a little while, so I grew up with my parents always around. They were always in the house, and we did a lot of stuff together. My sisters were much older than me. I was kind of the happy accident. So it was just kind of me and my parents growing up. And I was pretty introverted. I stayed indoors a lot. I played with Legos, and I didn't really go out a lot.
Okay.
And then I got my first BMX bike. I mean, I had a big wheel, and we used to jump that some and with some friends and things. But then I got a BMX bike, and then it was like all of a sudden the world was like open to me. It was like getting your driver's license back then, right? So
yeah, you
could go anywhere and do anything, and that's what I did. I started just riding around a lot, and then I was trying to jump my bike a little bit like we did on our big wheels, because we'd all watched Evel Knievel on TV when we were kids, and then I found a friend who ran into a friend who had actually had some BMX action magazines.
Okay.
And he showed me those, and I was like, holy crap, like this is like a real thing. Like
so where did you see the first BMX? In the mag, or just some kid on the street?
Just some kid on the street, yeah.
Okay, all right. Sorry, go on. Okay.
No,
and then you saw BMX Action mag, yeah?
Yeah. And so I was like, oh, there's like racing. And so I had told my dad about it, and he looked it up, and he found a racetrack that wasn't too far from our place. And I went there, and I was just blown away. I'd never seen so many like other BMX stuff, and like how serious some people were, because I was just I was just some grommet,
yeah.
And people had really shiny bikes, like and were really good, and I was terrible. I was like the worst.
And what year was this? Like early 80s?
Late 70s, yeah.
Oh really? Yeah, really early, yeah.
Yeah, 79, 80 probably in there.
Okay. And did you try and race, yeah?
Oh yeah. Not right away. I mean, I just kind of watched that first day. And then I think it was like late in the season, so I didn't go back until like a year later or so. So and then I convinced my dad that I had to get like a real BMX bike, not like the Huffy that I had.
Okay.
That I think came from like Target or something, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
At the time. And and so I got a PK Ripper.
Oh, nice.
It was really nice.
What color was it?
Black. It was black with black tufts, and it had like gold trim, gold parts, and gold sticker set. So
nice.
It was badass. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a nice color.
Yeah, it was really great. And so having like a real bike like started me off into like getting more serious about, racing.
Yeah.
And I started doing some races, but I was just bad. Like all I wanted to do is jump the jumps,
Yeah. That's what most people say that come on. Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to jump the jumps because, we didn't have jumps like that, like out in the neighborhood where I was at, it's only at the BMX tracks where they had like things that were purposefully made for bikes to jump. I mean, down the road from my house, there was a jump, area. There was like a dirt jump area, but it was mostly like older boys that were there, and you couldn't really go down there unless you were probably going to get bullied pretty hard.
Okay.
If you showed up there, but we'd go down once in a while and like watch from a distance because the older boys would be down there on their BMX bikes, like going crazy, and then we'd wait for them to leave and like try it out. But it was way too big for us, because I was like,
what was that? Just like a dirt flyout or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Excuse me.
Yeah.
And then, so who was you had a young crew then, I take it?
Yeah.
Like there's a few of you hanging out, just locals, yeah?
Yeah.
And what were they, just like friends from around the street or people you'd met at the race?
No, they're just friends from the neighborhood. Yeah.
Okay.
One guy was a little bit more serious, like he had a legit BMX bike, but most of the other kids just had like, kind of like Huffies or Pooks or stuff like that.
Department store sort of bikes, yeah.
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 But it didn't matter. Nobody cared about what bike you had. Of course
not. Yeah. And from there, like, you discover like an interest in freestyle. So where do you see like the first bit of freestyle you see is where? In a mag, I guess, right?
No, it wasn't actually. There wasn't much, at least in the magazines that I saw at the early BMX sections, there wasn't much freestyle displayed in those. No, I was at a big national race, which was being held at the St. Paul Civic Auditorium in St. Paul, Minnesota. And we went there, and it was just, huge, like, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of BMX riders from all over the Midwest were there. And it was one of those where they kind of converted the floor into a BMX track where they put like Coca-Cola extract on the corners, so it was like really sticky. Okay. I remember racing, and you go around the corner, if you put your foot down, like your shoe would stay, but you would keep going. Because I remember I had slip-on Vans. I had checkered slip-on Vans, and I remember I was racing, and I went around the corner. I put my foot down to get around the corner, and my shoe stuck there, and I had to finish the race with one shoe, and then walk
your
back.
Shoe come out off. You just had your sock on the pedal.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, and then
excellent.
And then I remember like where the finish line is, and right where the race ends. I remember being back there, and I saw a guy just standing there doing back wheel hops.
All right.
Just on his pedals. And I thought it was magic. I'd never seen anything like that before. Like, it literally looked fake, like magic to me. Yeah. Like, I was like, what is that? Like I have to be like, can I do like, and that was pretty much it. Like, after that experience, all I wanted to do was like do tricks on my bike. Like, I never raced again after that.
Who was that guy? Did you ever meet him?
No, it's just some random racer, older racer guy.
Okay. I had a similar thing where a guy, he wasn't even on a BMX, but he hopped up a curb like side on like that, and that was me as well. Mind blown. I was like, how's that work? Yeah. So
So that's the first time you've seen trick riding, and then so where do you go from there?
Yeah, well, then I started consuming all the magazines. I could get the magazines now. I could get subscriptions and stuff, and then I had my dad build me a small ramp in the backyard, and just started trying to ride that, like a little quarter that was like 6 foot tall.
Okay.
And then, when you build a ramp in your yard, most people don't know this, but the people who do know this, is that all of a sudden people start coming out of the woodwork from everywhere because they hear about your ramp and they want to ride it.
Yeah.
And so it really started attracting more experienced riders to my area because I had the ramp and they'd want to come over to check it out, even though it was kind of a piece of junk. But back then you didn't care. A ramp was a ramp. They were like, it was like, finding a Tyrannosaurus Rex skeleton.
Yeah, they were rare.
Very rare.
Yeah.
And then I got invited to go to some other people's ramps because of that.
Okay.
And then slowly started building up like a wider network of other riders that were from around the cities, not just my neighborhood. So
the scene starts building then, yeah?
Yeah, for
sure. Then you're like, your world is expanding. How did your dad know how to build a quarter pipe? Was there plans in a mag or something?
Yeah, it was plans in a Thrasher magazine.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I skateboarded a lot too.
You skated first?
Yeah, I skated a lot.
Okay.
So I was pretty familiar with skateboarding. But then being able to blend the idea of the bike and the skateboard together was pretty cool because I could ride a bike good, but I couldn't skate good. But I loved what the skateboarders were doing, but I couldn't do any of it. So
you must have been in skating at an obscure time. Was it early 80s you was in it, or 70s?
Oh, I got my first skateboard, when I was like 77,
all right. So
78.
Peak time,
I was like 7 or 8 years old, yeah.
All right. And did you just carry on skating until you got a bit, or when you got BMX you were still skating?
Yeah.
Was there a skate scene where you was?
No.
No, you was on your own, yeah?
No, there was there was nothing. There was nothing.
Oh.
I mean, there was, but not by me.
Yeah.
I came to find out much later there was people who had like legit like half pipes and things like that. But
okay.
Back then, you wouldn't get invited to something like that.
I suppose those guys were a little bit older as well. So
they were older, yeah.
I would assume anyway. So you've got you've discovered the sort of local wider scene, and your world has like become a little bit bigger, right? So then what? Who are the guys? Any names that we would have heard of, or just like local rippers?
So not right away, but eventually, my mom was lamenting to my father about how I was gone a lot.
Okay.
And so, I convinced him to build a half pipe in the backyard, like a legit half pipe. And that way I'd be around more often, which my mom agreed to because she didn't like me being gone. Because we'd be, I'd just take off in the morning and I'd show up, after the lights went out, She didn't like that. My mom was very, very overprotective. And so, so I built the half pipe, and then that's when like even more people started showing up. And that's when I first met Marty Schletzinger, who, he was in like one-on-one tricks, like
Camarillo. He was in the Camarillo part.
Yeah, he was in the Camarillo. Yeah, so he had grown up south of the cities, and I met him before he moved to California.
Okay.
And then started in all of that. So I rode with him a little bit. And then there was other guys that kind of in his crew that And then my dad was super accommodating, so he would like expand the ramp, extend the landing deck, and other things, and so it just became like a really good place, and lots of people would just come over. And I mean, I'd wake up, I'd get out of the house sometimes, and there'd already be like 4 or 5 people out in the yard riding, So.
Oh, okay. Oh wow! I've seen footage. I saw it on YouTube of the Kurt's jam and like the half pipe. I was pretty blown away. Yeah. But how did you come to make a half pipe? Is this early? This sounds like early for a half pipe. Was it an intentional half pipe or 2 quarters with like a bit of extra flat?
Yeah, it was like probably 85. I think that's when that video's from, 85, 86.
Okay. And
yeah, because that was the idea. Because most of the contests had quarter pipes that were like 100 yards apart, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So I didn't want to build like a real half pipe like they had in skateboard magazines, because I wanted to be able to train for like regular quarter pipe contests. So we created a half pipe, but with just a long flat bottom,
Yeah, like contests, sort of like the AFA kind of thing.
Because there was no half pipe contests, not until 86 when I did King of Vert.
Okay. Well, there was like a couple of low key ones, wasn't there? Like the Joe's jams and stuff, but they were like
yeah. But those were all
almost novelty sort of.
They were super novelty because they that was somebody convincing skateboarders to let bikes in, which was pretty hard to do back then. It's not easy to do now either, but whatever.
Oh, and what was because I didn't realize until I watched some old video footage of you that you could like blast some real airs, like on them quarters. Like, there was someone, they were doing a height contest, and someone was robbing you of about a foot of height with his measurement. Have you seen that one? Yeah. I was
That's
like,
right.
man, it wasn't there. You were like, he had some sort of personal issue, that guy. So where did you learn to like in your backyard, I guess, right?
You learned in the backyard. Yeah, it was just us competing with each other, in a friendly way, right? Who can go higher, and because I was riding coaster all the time, so my pump was a lot different than a lot of other. I had to usually go a little faster because I couldn't pump the same way some of the other guys could, and so I think there was something to that, I would just naturally pedal as fast as I could. Like,
all right.
And so, because we would ride. I mean, we'd literally ride 8-10 hours a day. So
you were just on it,
You're just on it, So, but I'd say, for the first few years, until I learned how to pump a transition, like I didn't get very high, and then all of a sudden. I figured it out. Like I figured out how to like absorb and release as I'm going up, without having to like push or pull as much as I used to. Just it made it easier to go higher.
Yeah. Well, did you not get the pedals? I see some old coaster riders, and they used to have to like do sort of false pedals almost when their cranks were in the wrong place.
Sometimes.
That looked difficult. Yeah.
And,
so how many kids were like showing up to session your ramps, like on the weekends or
on the weekends? Is like a dozen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some of them
they
come good,
from
right?
all over. They come from all over, and then like if there was like a traveling tour coming through, like Dennis, Joe Johnson, and Moliterno came over after a show, and they stayed for hours while my mom and my sister did their laundry.
Amazing.
So they'd sit there and ride the ramps, and Volker and other people, like if they were in town, like so we'd always invite them over and they'd drive over and park there,
So it's like stop off,
Yeah.
Was there a shop that you guys used to go to near where you lived, or did you just
a shop?
Mail order? Yeah, like a BMX store. Or...
Yeah, there was a couple. My first like sponsor was a place called Dave's Sports Shop, which was basically like they sold a lot of athletic uniforms for like high schools, but in the back they just had this little skate and BMX area for some reason. I don't know, because Dave was really into that stuff. And we'd go there, but there was a local shop called Flex, Fleck, Flex. And it was basically this guy that ran it out of his house. And he had like all the complete bikes were in the basement of his house and all the parts were in the garage. And we would hang out there forever. And that place became a gold mine later in the late 80s and 90s because he still had tons of Shimano pedals, like brand new in boxes. He had stacks and stacks of coaster brake parts and guts and things that he had all this stuff because he just bought tons and tons of inventory and just sat on it and became a gold mine later. But that place was great because they would kind of just fix your bike for free if you showed up and there was something weird and it wasn't too expensive. They just kind of help out.
Yeah.
And then there was a place in Anoka, not too far from our house, that we would go to all the time. And they were another first sponsor of mine, and they gave me like cost on my first bike, or my first like real BMX bike, which was a Hutch Trickstar.
All right. Is that the next bike you had from the Ripper, or you had a few in between?
I had from the Ripper, I went to a Hutch Pro Racer because I was still into racing. Right. And then I quickly got rid of that and got a Trickstar because the Trickstar had just come out.
Like, all right, yeah.
It just come out. I still have the original flyer that they sent out to bike shops.
Amazing.
To promote it to bike shops.
What prompted you to get the Trickstar? Like, was it the riders or just the brand?
Yeah, Hutch was just, it was like the Apple of its day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was high end. Yeah,
just high end. And I was always a big fan of Woody.
Okay.
So that led to it because I was riding still a lot of flatland too. So.
All right. Nice. What color was the Trickstar?
Chrome, all chrome. I got
a chrome one, yeah.
Everything was chrome. It's fantastic.
Right. Awesome. And how long did that last? Did you break it?
I think I just bent the dropouts. I think I tweaked the dropouts. Yeah, that didn't last super long. And then I remember in '84, Bob Haro, Rich Segur, and Ron Wilton came to do a show. And Ron wasn't riding, or Bob wasn't riding, but Rich and those guys were. And I saw the Haro Sport, and I was like, okay, that's my jam. Yeah. Because Rich Segur was so cool. Like,
yeah, definitely.
He was just the coolest rider.
He used to ride with the goggles on. Remember the pictures of him?
He had the goggles on. He had fluorescent socks and stuff. Like, and he like extended way more than most people did at the time. Like when he did like no footers or 1 footers and stuff, like he'd point his toes. Like I noticed shit like that. Like when you were magazines were your life, like you paid attention to the tiniest of details because you just studied every photo like it was an archaeological find, and you're sitting there with your brush, like, trying to figure out what brake pads they're using.
Yeah, I'm from that same era pretty much. Yeah. So I know that you just absorb all of it until the next one comes out, and then you absorb all of that as well.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And what were these guys on a Haro tour? What were they doing? Shop stops or something?
Yep.
Okay. And what was that? Flex?
No, that one was at a place called Eric's Bike Shop. That was a bike shop I had never been to. It's a bike shop that's still around. It's actually one of the bigger franchises in town. And Eric's would always have the Haro tours come through.
All right.
Like every year, no matter who was on the team, like Haro was there. So
was that one of the main bits of like activity for living in the Midwest, like the the shop stops. Did you get many of those?
Yeah, pretty regularly. Yeah. Because we're not too far from Chicago, really. So most of them would go to Chicago, and then it was just kind of, it wasn't a big deal. I think it's about 8 hours to Chicago, so not very far.
Yeah, it's far in UK terms. That's far.
I was just gonna say, in the UK, I know it's. I remember when I was in London, and who was I with? I don't remember, but we were in London and we were somewhere, and I was like, we should, we had like a free day or something. I was like, well, I'd love to go to Scotland. I want to see Scotland, and I think he was like, that's like 6 hours away, and I was like, what's the big deal? Like, I'll drive 6 hours on a weekend to ride a ramp. Like, are you kidding?
Was it Tim Ruck you were with?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. He's one of my old friends. Yeah. Nice. And so, like, what was the first like contest you wrote? Have you ridden in a contest by this point, right?
No. Well, yeah. So right after like the Haro stuff is when the contest started up. So one of the guys that that used to ride a lot with Marty was a guy named Dale Matson. He's the guy that won the first King of Vert contest in the amateur.
Okay.
And he started a little contest series based off of kind of the AFA stuff, and then he eventually got like sanctioned by the AFA and became a part of that stuff. So yeah, he started doing some contests, and most of them were at bike shops. It'd just be a quarter and a kick turn ramp. And I think I had entered my first contest around that time. I think it was because it was right around the time of the first two hip King of Vert. So probably that summer before that.
All right. What was that? 85 or 86?
86. Yeah.
86. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did you do in that?
I took second in that King of Vert.
Oh, cool. Oh no, the contest.
Oh, in the contest?
Yeah.
I would usually win ramp, and then I'd take like second or third in flat.
Okay. Well, pretty dominant then, yeah. Not
yeah,
bad.
as I got older, there was me and another guy that kind of went back and forth. We were kind of like the little Dominguez Fiola, of our neighbor, of our locale.
Who was that?
His name was Andy Jordan.
Okay.
Used to call him Air Jordan because he could really go high, and he could go really high, but I had more tricks. So
all right,
we kind of went back and forth for a while, but yeah.
Is he the guy with the Todd Anderson kind of look?
Yeah.
With the JT, because I saw in that clip of the of
that's the guy.
MFA and I just thought that's when you said that.
Yep. Yeah, I was the Haro guy. He was the GT guy.
Okay. And then how fast did you learn to do them high airs?
Yeah, I think
how long was that? What was that process?
Oh, yeah, that was years, honestly. Like, because I got my first quarter pipe in like 83, 84. And then it took a couple of years to actually start.
So the quarter grew. As the quarter grew, I guess the airs grew, right?
100%. Yep, that's 100% right. Yeah. So we moved from that 6 foot to an 8 foot. And then I eventually built a 9 foot quarter.
Okay.
And then I started going to places right after, especially after the King of Vert. Like, there were some places that had 10 foot half pipes and 11 foot half pipes. So we could get into those because we were now we were kind of known a little bit. So the skaters would give us a pass now.
Okay.
A bit more. So we could get
spots.
Yeah, we could go to some of the skate spots and some of the guys that had bigger ramps and then I started doing a lot of shows. So that's also how I got much better at getting air and much better at tricks too. Because I just started doing a lot of shows. Dale, who was running the contest series, would also set up shows at like state fair or like county fairs and different things around. And my dad had built a. What's that?
Did you have like a name for it? Was it some trick team or?
Yeah, it was like the Freeformer trick team or something.
Okay. Sorry, yeah, go on.
And then my dad built a portable quarter pipe for us that sat on a boat trailer that we could take and set up at these things. So
your dad
my dad was the engineer.
Was sorting it out big time, wasn't he? Yeah, nice.
Yeah. So that's and then I started bringing that ramp to the tour stops that the other riders would be doing.
Oh, okay.
You know? And so they all loved my ramp because their ramps were all pieces of junk. Like, like I remember the Bully team rode, Mike Kernike and Perry Mervar and stuff. They rode our ramp most of the time. And then when the general team came through, Kuahara came through, Dino came through, Haro came through. They were all riding my ramp.
Oh, unreal, man. What was your ramp? Bigger than theirs?
Yeah. Well, and it was smoother too because my ramp was all one piece. You just it was a quarter pipe that just laid down on the ramp, and then when you flipped it up, and all of theirs were like puzzle pieces where they like origami, and so every seam was a bump in those ramps.
Yeah. Okay. And it gets worse the more they take it apart and put it back together.
Exactly.
Oh, nice, man. I bet that was a treat to come and ride a ramp that was actually pretty decent in the halfway
really
across the US. Yeah.
Yeah, they really enjoyed it. And then that's when I started going to my first like national contest. My first national contest was in New York on Long Island at the end of 86. It was like the November of 86 or something. And I took second place in intermediate ramp. And I don't even remember what in flatland, probably not very good, sixth place or something. Right. I don't remember. I was nervous as hell because I walked in there and there's literally 5,000 people in this place. It was huge. I'd never seen anything like it in my life. Even my dad, who had been like, I think he'd been along this whole time just kind of humoring me. Like this was just kind of super niche-y, like Frisbee golf sort of, like nothing serious,
Yeah.
Like sure, there were some people who take it very seriously, but that was a very small amount of people, but then when we walked in there and he, with me and Dale, like, I think right then and there, he was like, oh, wow, this is like a big thing. Like
this is something. Yeah. Who was at that event?
Oh my God, everybody. Like,
yeah.
I met so many people. I met Hoffman for the first time there. I knew I had just, the Haro team had just come through earlier. So I was hanging out with Moliterno a bunch and Dennis. And, I met Hugo there. Mike Dominguez was there. R.L. Osborne. I mean, you name a big
cast.
It was every cast of character like Scotty Freeman, Chris Douchy. Like, I mean, like seriously,
all of them, the whole magazine pages.
Literally, people jumping out of the magazines were right there. It was incredible, and that's when my skills really jumped. Going to the big national contest is where things went to another level, right? Because at the magazines, you were always 2 months behind with whatever tricks and stuff was happening,
Yeah.
But then now that you're going to the national contest and you're seeing, and I saw Diz Hicks for the first time there, and I was like, what even is this? Like, what? His bike's upside down and he's floating around and like he's, I was blown away by everything, and so I went back and like I was even more jazzed, and then so I just kept going to like the national AFA contests. Yeah, it was great.
Who else left an impression on you at that event?
Oh man. Well, Dominguez for sure, because I never seen anybody go that high on a quarter pipe before. Like, you know, and Hoffman, of course, because he was like 14. He was like, you know, I think me and Matt are pretty close in age. Like, I think he's like half a year younger than me, maybe.
Okay.
So watching him like just explode, and he rode the worst ramp. Like, he, for some reason, liked the ramp that was just the worst of all of them. Hugo, I mean, was just electrifying. You know, he did stuff nobody else did.
All right.
Big transfers, you know, just all this stuff. And then Todd Anderson too. He was not even, I don't even think he was sponsored, but man, geez, did he go high.
Yeah.
So
crazy landings, Todd Anderson, like like steepest landings. Yeah, so
the
good.
Steepest landings. Yeah. And again, I attribute that to coaster brake. But watching like RL and Martin, and these guys were such technicians when it came to flatland. Like, I mean, all their tricks were like matched up to the music. It was like watching a really high-end ice skating event, you know?
All right. Oh man. And then that became a bit of then you started going to more AFA contests after that one, yeah?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I was addicted.
All right.
I was addicted because not because I wanted to compete, but because I wanted to see the innovation, you know? You
wanted to soak it up, yeah.
Yeah.
See what was going on that in real time, like you can do.
Yeah, but I couldn't just go to the contests, and like I had to ride in them. You know, it just seemed like a waste of money and time to go and watch.
All right. Yeah. Who else was Hoffman was in your class then at that contest?
No, he was in the expert class. I was in the intermediate class.
Oh, okay. And
back then you couldn't just enter expert or pro.
Yeah, you had to go up the ranks.
Yeah,
okay. And it was.
But I was the only person in my class that did a 540.
I was going to ask you about the 540s later on, yeah, because you were doing 540s very early, especially for just like someone who's not in one of the the big coasts, you know. So you met Rick first on a Haro tour, I would assume. Yeah?
Yep.
Okay, and then it just became like that's how your friendship came about.
Yeah, well, I mean, he was from Iowa, and we thought, you know, and Dennis was from Kansas City, so you know, we kind of had this Midwest thing going on, you know, because all the other guys were all from the West Coast, you know.
Yeah.
And so there was kind of a solidarity because you knew like we were Midwestern guys, like you just got along and you just hung out, you know. It's like, you know, it's like if you're an American and you are in Germany or something and you run into another American at a restaurant, all of a sudden you're like best friends, you know?
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing.
Common bond, isn't it? Like you just like, oh yeah. And then you go from there. Yep. So Kansas is far from you though, right?
Yeah, it's about Kansas City. Yeah, it's about 8 hours or so, and Rick was about 6 hours away.
So yeah, comparatively speaking, you're almost local to each other if you're talking about America. So yeah, okay, and that's how you guys start meeting. Then you meet at the contest, and then you have something going then, right?
Yeah, we just kind of stay in touch, and then you know, as time went on, like with me and Rick opened up a skate park down there, and then I remember one of my other riding friends was like, "Oh, Rick opened up a skate park. We should go down there." And all of a sudden, that was it. Like I was going down there once a month, you know, and then that all snowballed into standard and all the other stuff. So
okay,
but that was much later. That was like 1989.
Okay. Did you ride for Haro at some point? As you was doing these contests?
Yeah, so early on when I was like 17, so 87, I was co-sponsored by Haro.
Okay.
So it was really big deal. Like I remember like I got the contract in the mail. I still have the contract. I saved it all these years. It's like this thick contract about,
No way.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I decided to sign a copy and send it back, and then they started giving me. They wouldn't give you completes, but they would give you frames, forks, and some clothes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who arranged that deal?
That originally was Jim Ford, I think.
All right. Well, he just saw you at an AFA contest or something.
No, I got referred to from Rick and Dennis.
Oh, cool, man. Oh, nice.
Yeah.
The brothers. Yeah.
Yep. And so I sent in like a sponsor me video, VHS
All
tape,
right.
and Rick and Dennis had vouched for me too. So I got on the flow team there, and then in '89 I got sponsored by Vision Streetwear.
All right.
And then I think again, like then that's when I think it was Rick and my friend Rich. So my friend Rich, who I grew up with, Rich Hansen, he was excuse me. He had moved to California in 87 or 88, and he took a job at Haro. He was a brand manager at Haro for a number of years, and he's the one that got me on full factory or whatever. After I gotten sponsored by Vision, him and Rick were like, hey, look, Vision, Brian Sciarra's giving him all this stuff, like we should give him bikes. And then I got sponsored full from Haro.
Okay. What Brian Sciarra worked for Vision at the time?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that. Yeah. I know Rick used to ride for Vision. Yeah.
Yep.
And you've learned 540s before you were sponsored by Haro, I take it, right?
Oh yeah. No, I did my first 540 at the end of 85, early 86, somewhere in there. Because it's hard to talk about it too, because there's winters here in Minnesota, so like there's only real seasons of riding, because you couldn't ride really year round until we got older and built like indoor stuff. So back then, like you put your bike away and it was gone for 4 months, but I don't remember. I think it was seeing Dominguez when he was on the Hutch tour, because that's the first time I met Rick, was when he was on Hutch, because Woody had broken his leg. And so he was out, and then they brought Rick on the tour with Dominguez, and that's how I met those guys.
Okay.
And I remember Dominguez doing a 540, and it was like 86, I think.
In the show?
In the show, yeah. He did a 540, and it was on a 6-foot ramp, and so I was like, oh.
Wow.
And I remember just sitting in my backyard, just trying to figure out how to do this thing, like, because I was always good at spinning. Like I was a good spinner. Like I could 360 bunny hop and do all this stuff. Like I was very good spinning rider. So, so I just figured out a way to like spin and then kind of engage my coaster as I landed and then flip the rest of the way around. And once I got confident with that, then I was able to start going up a little higher and actually like landing, like, but it kind of just started out as like a 360 bunny hop on the transition where I'd kind of kick turn around. Like that's how I learned it,
Yeah. Yeah. And then, if you go faster, it just takes you around, right?
Yep.
Yeah. But that's the scary bit. Yeah. But that's quite like
it was the scary bit
for 1985. That's like there wasn't many people doing. I mean, in that year, yeah. So that's pretty. When I saw that, like I was like, whoa, like because you did one, I think, in one of them early I think you did a few of them, one of them contest runs, but that was obviously later on,
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I did a few of them. And yeah, I was one of the only people that did 540s even at that first 2-hip,
Yeah. And the 2-hip is around this time, right? So that's the first 2-hip jam. What
the very first one.
Was that like the one that was cancelled and they had to go into the barn or something like that? Is that one?
Yeah, okay. So there was originally a skate park that had opened in '85 indoors here in Minnesota called Ramp City. And and Marty would ride there a lot. And this was after Marty had come back from California for a while. He came back for a little while. And he had just filmed like Freestyle's 101 Tricks or whatever. And so like he had told Dennis about it, and then Dennis came up some. And Dennis was such a nice guy. Oh my gosh. He was just, like I remember like I'd ask him to like do, spinning cherry pickers to show my dad. Like he'd do it, and I'd be like, look at this. Isn't that magic? Like, and my dad'd be like, yeah, it's great. And I'd be like, my ears are bleeding. My eyes are bleeding, and they had a big, they had a big 11-foot ramp, right? Which was used for skating and for biking. And when Ron wanted to start the 2-hip stuff, he was like, it's going to be a national contest, but obviously who's got these giant ramps like the Enchanted ramp, you know what I mean? Like, that we can go to. There isn't a ton of them, right? So he knew Marty and stuff, and so they were like, yeah, do it here. And great. And then all of a sudden, because of insurance reasons, Ramp City had to close, but Ron had already like booked everything for the contest, right? So it was promoted, things were paid for, flights, you know what I mean? Like, so they found this barn in LeSueur, Minnesota, which is, if you've ever heard of the Jolly Green Giant, the food, that's where that's where like their headquarters are.
Okay.
So when you're driving into LeSueur, there's literally a huge Jolly Green Giant that's like welcoming you to LeSueur. It's really funny. And there was some drama around this. So when they got it in there, they couldn't put they had to cut a foot off the top, because it just wouldn't fit. Like you couldn't air on it, And so they cut a foot off the top. So it's basically now it has no vert, just to the coping. And that caused some issues. Like Randy Tishman was there, and he crashed so bad that he had to like kind of exit. Marty broke his wrist on the ramp during practice, and he couldn't compete. So the only reason why Dale and me got first and second is because Marty was out, because Marty would have won. But I remember like some of my friends who were going like didn't tell me that this was happening. I didn't learn of the contest until the night before that this was actually happening. Yeah. And
so they were going. They were going, but they didn't tell you.
Didn't tell me.
Motherfuckers. Yeah.
Motherfuckers is right. But it was a very competitive time back then too. So kids, right. So I showed up, I rode, I couldn't really air the ramp that much. It didn't have much. So I just kept carving over the canyon, which was a roll in, but they had just taken it out. And so it was just this empty space in there. And I remember like I was like, all right, well, I'll just jump the canyon because it'll look like I'm going higher than I am. And then that's when I got my first picture in the magazine that said, like Canyon Kurt carving his way to second place. And I remember like I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm in awe because like Wendy Osborne is taking pictures of me, Yeah. Like, and John Kerr is there. Like, these are the
what's going on?
These are the gods of BMX photography,
Yeah.
Like, and
descended on the Jolly Green Giant. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Exactly.
So, that was your first picture in the mags. Then was in freestyling.
Yeah, I was in freestyle in there. That was the first. Yeah, I had actually gotten a picture of a letter I had sent in the it's in the first or second issue of Freestyling magazine.
All right.
So I had, this is a funny story. I'll try to send you a picture of this.
All right, thanks.
But BMX Action had the Nora Cup, right?
Yeah.
And I wrote a letter to them saying, you know what would be smart is for you guys to do a Nora Cup for freestyle. And I'd written this letter on my dad's typewriter where he typed his sermons, and I was just really bad at it. And I was like a little kid,
Yeah.
And then they announced Nora Cup. And when they announced Nora Cup in the magazine, they took a photo of my letter and put it in there and saying, that's a good idea, Kurt. And now we're going to announce blah, 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 blah. So that was my first photo in a magazine.
Oh wow! I've never even seen that. Yeah, I haven't got all freestylings. I'm missing a few. Yeah, I wonder if I've got that one.
I've got a picture of it somewhere.
All right, nice. And just back to the two hip event. So
yeah,
they drove the ramp to the Jolly Giant. Yeah,
yeah, in pieces.
Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. Yeah, I always assumed that was just in that barn.
No.
Okay.
No. That thing was put up in no time. And there's no heat in there. Literally, we had to go outside to where there was empty oil drums with fires in them to warm up.
Because it's the middle of winter, yeah.
Yeah. It was it was cold. It was I think the high was in the 20s that day.
Oh man! And what did you win? I saw you was busting out a few 540s on that ramp as well. Actually,
yeah.
What did you win at them contests? If you was,
I got a plaque. I still have the plaque.
Oh, excellent!
I still have it. Yeah, I got a plaque, a nice gold plaque. It's on my Instagram. I got pictures of it.
All right, I'll check it out. I'll delve in a bit later on. And where do you go from here? You ride any of them other two hip events, or was that got to be the nearest one? Oh, you rode more, yeah?
Yeah, eventually I started going. I went to the Flint, Michigan one. I went to one in Colorado. I went to a bunch of them. But then around that time, I was kind of. That's when not about a year or so after that it started. I think we were riding more street in general.
Okay.
So I stopped really getting into transition stuff slowly as those contests grew. I just went to go,
You was going the other way.
Yeah.
And what spurred that? How did you end up getting more into the street side of things?
Because it blended flatland and ramps together.
Okay.
And I always loved, I loved riding both, and
all right.
And I was way more attracted to the technical side than just hucking it higher.
All right. Yeah, I didn't even know you was into flatland that deep, funnily enough.
Yeah, early on, yeah.
You can tell when in some of the later video parts that you've obviously done a lot of it, but I didn't know how deep into it you was. Okay.
Yeah, I competed in a lot of the AFA stuff early on in flatland, and yeah.
Who was the obvious influences in that? Was Kevin Jones, I guess, right?
Dennis and Rick and Chris Day was a big influence.
Okay, yeah, Chris Day.
Because Jones was great. I mean, it was just a wizard, but I liked the more aggressive style of Rick and Dennis and Chris Day and a few other folks, Darren Pelio. There's a few. They were just a bit more aggressive with their stuff,
snappy, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was snappy. It just felt it was aggressive, but still like beautiful. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Chase Goodwin. That
Yeah,
would be
Chase was a great example.
What you
Yeah,
describing in words there. Yeah.
yeah, that's perfect example. Yep.
Yeah. And then so at this point you're into more street riding and I guess also mini ramp is starting to come around, right?
Yep. 100%. Yeah, because because like Two Hip Meet the Street had happened, and I didn't get to go to any of those because I think I had gotten a job or something, and so I couldn't really like go to those things, and then like local street contests started happening, and those were fun. And then my friend Rich was like, you gotta move out to California, like stop messing around, like this is where everything is, what are you doing, and I was like, no, I'm good, but I went out there and hung out with him, and I filmed some with Eddie Roman for
what video was that for?
Ride Like a Man.
Okay, I didn't even know you was on that. Yeah, where are you on that?
In the in the opening sequence, there's like 2 shots of me doing a no-handed 360 and a can 360 at that place, Chad Harrington. That step up.
Yeah. Okay, I know it now. Yeah. That's Ride Like a Man. Yeah. I didn't even know that was that early. Okay, so no-handed 360. What's this? 1989.
No, that
1990.
89.
So that's yours then, right?
Yeah. I mean, I thought I had seen somebody do it before. I didn't think I was like inventing it. I thought I had seen somebody do it before, but then after I started doing it, like everybody's like, I've never seen anybody do
that. That's funny because I was only going off of memory, right? So I remember that both of them tricks in that video, but I didn't know they were from that video. But I watched, I think it's Roger's Garage, maybe. You do one in that, and I was like,
yep.
I was like, nobody else has done that at this point. Like, and I was pretty convinced. Yeah. So
I at the time, like if you were to pulled up next to me and been like, like, oh, where'd you learn that? I'd be like, oh, I thought,
blah blah. Someone.
I thought somebody.
Yeah,
I don't remember what it was. Like, who was the test rider for like BMX Plus and stuff back, like before, like Mad Dog and all those guys? There was some other guy. I just thought somebody else had done it, but apparently no. So
I would say that no one else has done it at that point. I'd be pretty confident. Yeah.
So I just started doing that because I learned most of my jumps on doing flyouts, so like tail whips and different types of, variations on spins and things. I just do flyouts, and then eventually I do them on a box jump or spine or something. So
okay.
But that's why I love the Chad Harrington area there when Eddie took me there, because that's what it is. It's a giant flyout, huge, monstrous flyout.
Give you safety and plenty of time to
my god, so much airtime. You're just floating, and and if you crash, like, no big deal. But I was out there, and I got to ride with Eddie and Chris Day, Chris Potts a bunch. Me and Chris Potts rode a bunch. He had like a mini ramp set up, and all of them were telling me to move there, So
okay, who did you stay with when you went to California?
I stayed with Kevin Martin and Rich and those guys. They had like a house. They had like 6 guys in a rented house.
Was that the one near Ron's house? Or?
Yeah, it was kind of
okay.
Yeah, it was kind of not far from Ron's place.
All right, yeah, I know that was a bit of a destination for a lot of people. Some of the guys from the UK did that as well.
Yeah, yep. Oh yeah, I was just sometimes they would just stay there.
Yeah.
Like those Scottish guys, like Sandy and them, when they came to Rampage, they ended up just staying there.
Yeah. never to return. Some of those guys, man.
Yep.
And so you had a good time in California, I take it. Did you move back to California? What happened after that?
No, I didn't. I had a good time with those folks, but I just didn't like California.
Were you still riding for Haro?
Yeah, I was riding for Haro like full time then. Yeah, that was another reason to go out there, was like to meet like Jim Ford and some of those people that were running Haro in person,
All right.
And and then then I came back and rode, did stuff for a while, and then I we were around that time we were going to Rampage a lot.
All right.
When it was in its first iteration, which was like a tiny place. And then Rick had expanded it. He moved it to the bowling alley, which was the stuff you see like in Roger's Garage and things like that. And so we had to come down for that, because now it's in this big place and it's got this giant box jump, and at least at the time, it's got all these different types of things, and we were riding all that stuff, and man, it just felt so good. And so it's just a lot of fun. And then I remember like telling Rick, like, I was thinking about moving out there, and he just was like, "That's dumb. Don't do that." And I was like, "Yeah, but I want to make a career out of this,
Yeah.
And so I remember like months later, I went back out to like find a place to live. Right. So, I flew out there, and me and Rich and we were just with a bunch of other guys, Southern California guys, riders and stuff. And, I looked at some places, and, I decided like, maybe I'll just stay with those guys at the house for a couple of months while I look for something that's probably going to be the easiest. And they were cool with it. And I rode a bunch. And then when I got home, my dad was like, "Rick called." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And he's like, "Yeah," he said, "Call him right away, and don't move to California." And I was like, "Okay." so I was like, "Okay." So, Rick Moliterno calls you call him back, right? So
yeah.
And so I called him, and he's like, "Hey, I want to talk to you about something. When can you come down here?" And I'm like, I don't know, like in a week or something. He's like, "Well, as soon as you can, And I was like, "Okay." So I went down there, and he's like, because the first Hoffman, or one of the first Hoffman contests, the BS contests, were coming up, and he's like, you're going to go to that? And I was like, "Well, yeah, I'm going to go to that." And he's like, "Okay, well," he's like, "Been talking to Bill here, who's Bill Nitschke, who I used to ride with at Rampage once in a while when he was in town, because he was from Indiana."
Okay.
And so, and Perry Mervar and him like rode together all the time. So we'd hang out with them. Rick would let us just kind of like stay there even when the place was closed, we just pay extra for the electrical costs.
All right.
Because it was expensive to light that bowling alley.
Yeah, it was huge, wasn't it?
It's huge.
Yeah.
So, so Rick's like, "Okay, well, me and Bill are going to start a bike company," and I told him I don't want to do it unless you're a part of it.
Nice.
And I was like, "What?" I was like, "No, I've got all these other plans. Like, I'm gonna go to California and ride for Haro, and I'm gonna do tours, with like Ron and Nuri and stuff. You know what I mean? Or no, Ron was off. Yeah. Ron was on Wilkerson, or no, Ron hadn't started Wilkerson Airlines yet. Or did he? No, he had. You're right. Yes, he had started Wilkerson Airlines. So, I was like, I got this whole other plan, and whatever. And he's like, yeah, that's dumb. Don't do any of that. Those guys don't give a shit.
All right.
He's like, they're just going to like chew you up or whatever, and I was like, oh, okay. Well, I got to think about it, and he's like, well, think about it fast because, we're going to get started here and we want to announce it at the contest,
Yeah.
And I was like, what do I do, And I mean, it basically kind of came down to like, Haro had never really shown any interest in me.
Yeah.
Like they weren't putting me in ads or anything. I mean, they put my name in like the Haro, like here's our list of sponsored riders.
I didn't know that you rode for Haro, so
I know.
Yeah, so I should have known that, like, for definite.
Yeah, well,
that shows you,
Yeah, well, me and Nitschke, were both on Haro at that time, and so was Rick, right? But he's Rick, right? So
I knew Rick was on. Yeah,
of course you did. But if you looked at like the tour schedules and stuff, like me and Bill's name were never on,
Okay.
that stuff, So, but I was getting like 3 complete bikes a month, like because I was going through them that fast.
What bikes were they that you were going through? Bashguard ones.
Yeah, the Bashguard ones. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I just go through the forks in a minute, and then I twist up the rear triangle so bad you couldn't get a wheel on it.
Yeah, I remember them. Yeah.
Yeah, and so Rick was like, "Well, I'm going to do this bike company, and it's going to be a really strong bike. Like it'll take anything you can throw at it, And I was like, "That sounds really good, actually." Like, because I'm tired of I'm tired of bikes breaking all the time, and so I went back home and I told my parents, and I asked my dad for some money to help to invest in, and he gave me $10,000.
Wow.
And I took it down and I put it in the bank account, and Rick put in whatever was in Rampage, because Rampage was a part of the whole deal, right?
Yeah.
So, and Bill had his peg company, so he put the peg company in, and that was it. Then we started Standard Bikes, and then we went to...
Okay.
Then Haro had paid for us to go to the first contest, and instead of wearing Haro stuff, we got some Standard shirts printed up and just announced that we were launching our own bike company.
Nice. Did you ever get any backlash for that one?
No, like I said, they didn't give a shit. We were just some Midwestern dudes, like,
yeah,
they didn't care.
Well, they didn't even notice it.
I mean, they were a little tweaked at Rick, but they also knew not to fuck with Rick.
Yeah. Oh, so Roger's Garage came before you launched it?
Yeah. Well, was right around the time that we launched it.
Okay.
Yeah, most of the footage is from that year right up until we launched it. Yeah.
Okay. Because that has got some really groundbreaking riding in it. Like, and even like when I watched that last week, after we spoke,
yeah,
it seemed even more advanced than when I watched it like back then. because you put everything in like a different perspective, and it was like I was just going through the tricks, like, well, I've never seen that before. And even to the obstacle that, like, one of the main features was the sort of driveway with the grind bar on top, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you go back, people aren't riding that stuff like at all. Like, they're not even riding it. It's not like doing the same tricks, but they're not even riding that stuff at that point. And I noticed the feeble grind 180 that you did, which I would also say was a first.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think that was done before.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah. Just
yeah, but that just passes when you watch it and it first comes out. It kind of, you're not taking it all in, but like when you watch it reflectively, it's like, wow, there's a load of firsts here. And what I also noticed was the Hurricane, which was the 360 Hurricane.
Yeah,
fakie,
it took me.
right?
I had to look it up when you said it because I didn't know it actually had a name.
Okay, so that was always credited to Brian Castillo, but he used to do the one that come out forwards as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think anyone has ever said, "Oh, Kurt Schmidt did that in Roger's Garage," which I was really surprised about because that looks coaster heavy. That one, yeah, you're just on the coaster.
Yeah, actually, no. It's actually
it's a nice. It's good. It's a good one as well. It's like off and then.
Yeah. Well, that's the funny thing about it because if you do lean on the coaster, it's harder to do because you don't
spin out.
You don't keep your momentum. So it's actually very light on the coaster when I was doing that, and but that just came. That was just us. Dorking around kind of stuff. Like I didn't look at that as like a real trick. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
Like
but
that.
Neither did anyone else when that came out because no one picked that up. Not one person was like, "Oh, look at that!" Like,
that was a problem too. Like, I think Rick suffered from this a lot too. Is that when you make stuff kind of look really easy, it doesn't come across.
And sometimes when there's not like the biggest name doing the trick, it doesn't.
Yeah, there's that too. Yeah, exactly.
Like, happens so many times.
Yeah, because that was right after that came out, and then we went out to that contest. Like right after that, like BMX published like basically like their top 12 riders in the world, and that's when I finally I got noticed, because they put me in.
Oh, you've seen that feature? Oh, yeah, cool. Yeah, another one I noticed was Rick doing the bash guard slide, like sideways.
Yeah, like nobody was doing that.
Yeah, nah.
Nobody was doing that. Not like that. And at the speed he was doing it at too was nobody was doing that. People were just kind of hitting their bash guards and then coming to a stop and then hopping off. But
yeah.
But that was the thing about riding with Rick was, nothing pushed you harder because he was doing everything you were doing at twice the speed and twice the length and twice the height. And do you know what I mean?
Yeah. One of them one-off guys.
Oh yeah.
And what was the what was you were taking influence from skateboarding, I assume, at this point in time?
Oh yeah, because we were at the skate park, so we were with skateboarders all the time, and all we did is watch skate videos because there wasn't a ton of bike videos at the time, right? You'd have like Eddie Roman and stuff, and but there was no props or things like that later. S&M did a video like every 8 years or something, or
Okay.
So the only thing we had to satiate ourselves was skate videos, and that was like the biggest influence,
And what you're just watching them videos and thinking, how can we do this on a bike? Right, this is what most people think.
Yeah, or oh wow, I didn't realize like if I shift my weight like they do, but I do it on my bike, I can make the bike do, this thing.
It will turn a different way, yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Something else happens, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so, it wasn't necessarily about like, oh, they did a toothpick, so I'm going to do a toothpick. But it was like when you saw them doing there was a time for a while in 90s skateboarding where like pressure flips were like really popular. And I remember thinking about pressure flips in the same way, like I was thinking about tail whips in a way.
Yeah.
Like depending on how like you went into it and which way you were leaning and how far forward you were would determine like the speed of the whip, the depth of the whip, all this stuff. So, so it was just kind of influential that way.
Yeah, that was good. This is good. All technicalities and like thinking differently. Yeah, I like this way of.
Oh man, no, we were.
You've been thinking, dissected it big time.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, we were in a lab.
Yeah,
all the time, dissecting everything, because that's it. Like tricks didn't, like Rick was like, tricks don't count if you hop,
Yeah. Yeah, I like that way of thinking as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So you had to get, like, you didn't learn a trick if you had to hop out of it or hop into it, like we wouldn't have considered it a learned trick back then, So
not unfinished.
Unfinished, yeah. I mean, it was cool that you did it, but like it wasn't cool.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's that. I was actually going to ask you that. Like, obviously, it looks like you guys have that like thing of, oh, you hopped, it don't count. Like that would be one of them, or like, or there's some tricks that for me, like say for instance, a peg grind. Remember when people used to do peg grinds and then like do a can? It's like,
yeah.
What? Why? Like,
yeah, that didn't. Like, no, we were very
stuff like that. Strict.
We were very anal about stuff like that.
Yeah.
To the point of,
I enjoy it.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, and it to say like we wouldn't like, you wouldn't like shun people. You wouldn't be like dicks to them, you know. But you would give them some shit to be like, come on, you can do better than that, you know. Like, you know. But that was the thing is like, yeah, you know, it had to be tight, you know. Unless it was like, you know, then just, you know, unless you're just learning something, then it can be all loosey goosey and whatever, you know.
Yeah.
But like if we're filming or doing whatever and you want to get something in, like there isn't going to be anything where if you don't pull the rollback, it didn't count. Like I'm still that way to this day. Like it drives me. That's the one thing that drives me crazy about today's riders is just learn your rollbacks, dude. Like learn how to roll back. Come on. I'm not saying like learn how to do backwards tricks, but I see all these guys doing these, you know, these something out to 180s or this and that to 180s. But it looks like as soon as they get in a rollback, it looks like they've never been on a bike before.
Well, I don't know if you've noticed with the newer stuff, like some of the street stuff, people have got free coasters so they can land under rotated, almost stationary, and then just hop round. I figured you might have picked up on that. Yeah. So I'm one for that. So I'm like, come on, you got to land with you got to rotate right so that you actually roll back. Like otherwise,
it's got to be
like you say, it's not correct. Yeah,
it's got to be fluid. It can't. If it looks forced, then it's forced, and it just doesn't look as stylish. So
if it looks baggy.
Yeah. So back then, you know, I mean, like, you know, you wouldn't get I mean, even when Chris Rye was filming stuff, I mean, even when Mark Losi came and took photos, like he wouldn't publish anything if you didn't pull it, you know?
Yeah.
Like there was no pictures like that Losi would use that if you didn't pull that trick, he wouldn't use it. You know what I mean? So there was a purism about it then. Even if you touched your foot down, you know, like that wasn't pulling it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, good. That's for me, that's it. That's how it should be, isn't it? So that's
because I mean, again, it's a sport. Okay, it's like it's a sport. So
and there's a criteria to be met, isn't there, before it makes it into the pages, like
exactly
video. So
yeah, and so it's cool if you don't agree with that, but just don't film it and show it to people. Don't pretend like you know. So make it look good. And that was my point. Like when we were doing the videos, it's like, if we're going to show this to people, like, you know, like if I'm doing 540 nose picks, like there's no hopping, you know, like, it's just go. So, and, you know, but over the years, like, you know, some people be like, oh, that coaster brake, it's a crutch, you know, whatever. And then I remember this one guy, I was in a park in St. Louis, and he's like, yeah, I could do a bunch of that stuff if I had coaster. And I was like, here, take my bike. Go impress me.
I bet he couldn't even pump up the ramp. Well, you can't.
He tried rolling in and flipped over the bars. Like, he literally he engaged as he was rolling in. He engaged the coaster and flipped over the bars. Because like there's because I didn't realize like the impact that stuff had on certain. Because some people really appreciate it. Like I remember Mel Cody told me like one of the best tricks he ever saw me do was this really long manual, like in Style Cats or something. And he's like, that's just the best trick ever. And I was like, why? It's just a manual off this thing. He's like, but you have coaster, your legs and it is the most locked in thing I've ever seen, you know, like, and I was like, oh, that's a way to look at it, I guess, you know, but to me, it was like, that's just how you did stuff. Cause I didn't have a lot of play in my coaster. I hated that. I wanted almost no play in my coaster when I was riding.
I remember getting a coaster when I was a youngster for kick turns and stuff, and trying to hop over a can, and I couldn't hop over the can for like the first 5 goes or something until I got used to that kind of. It just would lock, like you say, you just hit it,
And I loved it because I mean, again, like Rick was riding a coaster at the time, so like, it was like it just kept me going. Like I could imagine if I would have moved there and Rick would have been riding a freewheel and everybody else was riding a freewheel, I probably would have, switched over,
Yeah. I mean, that'd be a hard switch, I think, as well after all them years. But I mean,
I did switch to a free coaster like in the late 90s, when I had stopped riding professionally. So,
okay.
But I didn't like it, but I did it because mostly for half pipe riding.
Yeah. All right. And back to like standard, like what?
Yeah.
Who come up with like the product ideas?
Yeah. So Bill had already, invented the pegs, right?
Yeah.
Which were the big hot selling thing.
The huge pegs. What are they? Hand grenades? What are they called?
Yeah. Well, that was Rick's. That was later.
Okay.
So the original pegs were just
straight ones. I remember. Yeah,
just the straight ones with a little knurl on them, but they were longer. And people, were just eating them up because people wanted bigger pegs, right? Because we were doing handrails now, and so you needed bigger pegs. And then shortly after that, Rick was like, "Well, the axles keep breaking because the pegs are so big, so let's do axles." So we started doing heat treated axles, and then eventually, my dad got a little involved with some of the bike stuff, the frame and fork stuff in the beginning, like helping with getting some technical drawings done from Rick's sketches, like getting some more professional drawings done and stuff. But Rick was really he was the guy for all the parts and bikes and all this stuff. Like we would ride it and we'd give him feedback, my only feedback was make it like an 87 Haro Sport geometry, but that won't break. And that was kind of the first Lengthy was kind of similar to that.
Okay. Whose idea was the platform? Was that Rick's?
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was for the time. I thought that was an odd thing to include. All the platforms were coming off. And then this new bike company came out and they were on. They went back on again. It was like, what's going on here? Yeah.
Yeah. It was something that we didn't even think about. It was just, of course, it's a freestyle bike. So it's got that extra, sort of bracing there,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
so
I still look back at that and feel, is there someone else's vision is like to put the platform on its freestyle bike? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, well, we didn't necessarily look at it just as it was a platform, but it was also part of stiffening the frame.
Structure.
It was structure.
Okay. And how much were them first frames? Do you remember how much they weighed?
Oh man, yeah, I don't remember exactly, but it was in the 30s, 30s, 40s. The first frame. I mean, it was a monster.
Yeah, I remember them. Yeah, when they came, everyone was like, that was one of the talking points.
But it rode great, right? So that was the thing.
Well, it had to go that far.
Yeah.
So it didn't break because everyone's bikes were breaking in half. So
yeah, right, exactly. And this is the thing that I also have a problem with is when people, you'll see people talking about the overbuilt era, I wouldn't have called it an overbuilt era because we didn't have resis and pools then, So we didn't have foam pits, and those types of things. So when you were doing all this stuff, when the bike would hit the ground, like it would break, you know?
Yeah.
Like literally, like the forks would shear off, you know? Like
Yeah.
it was very dangerous to ride those earlier bikes with the tricks that we were trying to do at the links and heights that were happening, you know? And so
and the riding was more primitive.
the riding was more
it wasn't
primitive.
like
Yep.
nobody was landing properly, really.
So the bikes were not overbuilt. I don't like that term. And maybe it's because I'm biased, whatever. I don't give a shit. But it was a response to the way that riding was going. Like, again, if we would all had resis and foam pits, like we probably wouldn't have needed to build them that tough, because we could have learned all the tricks into those, right? And then be able to start landing them in real areas, you know, more smoothly with less issue. So but again, you know, that's an old guy's take on it, whatever.
I think that's 100%. Like, I mean, to be honest, I'd rather not even see the resis and foam pits. I'm not a fan. I think it makes the riding look too safe. So like, so you probably relate to this. Like, so you've done 1,000 whatever spins into this resi, so that when you do it on a real concrete or wood, it does, you know exactly what's going on. It doesn't even, it looks so easy. It doesn't even look like scary. So therefore it's like taken all of the character from the trick. It just looks like a machine going.
Yeah. And that's why the reason why I retired, because when I retired out of competing once the X Games came out, but I was riding against in contests like Miran, Mira, all those guys, right? And those guys were like, they were jocks, you know, and like they, you know, like I remember, you know, riding with Mira, like he took it as serious as like a football player did, you know, like takes football, you know, like, you know, those guys were like lifting weights and shit like that. Like I wasn't, you know, like I hardly knew what I was going to do when I dropped in, but these guys had their runs planned out. And that's when I realized, like, that's a different kind of riding, you know, which I appreciate, right? Like the Logan Martins of the world and stuff, like they're fantastic, you know, like, but that's a different kind of riding than I look at like freestyle, you know, like that's what they're doing is like the sport, you know, like you have in, you know, gymnastics, right? Like you learn specific moves, right? To win more points.
To rack up the points. Yeah,
to rack up the points and then you win. That's it. That's the sport of it, right? But then you look at like freestyle where people are making stuff up as they go along. That's a different thing. So to me, they're not the same. You know, it might be the same sport, but it's a very different ballpark, you know?
Yeah, it's a different way of doing it. Those guys, though, they were just like warriors, weren't they? They were like all willing to die for a BMX run. Like, and it still looked dangerous. When they rode, it was like, what is he going to do now? Like, it still wasn't sanitized as like a...
because that's the thing is like people would still like debut new tricks. I mean, they kind of do now, but there would be more debuts of new tricks like in their runs, you know, but there was less head games than there might be now. Whereas like, you know, at the X Games now, like you'll see some guys that are like they could do a trick, but they'll purposefully not do it, like to be like, oh, I don't know, is he riding good or not? Even though, like, you know what I mean? And it's like he's fine. He could do that in his sleep. He's just building up some, which I appreciate. You know, the showmanship of it. I think that's great. I think BMX needs more showmanship, like we had back in the early days. You know, where you know you'd have Mike Dominguez and his lowrider truck and like all tricked out and. You know, like
they're doing the Hulk Hogan. They're doing
Yeah,
like,
stuff to aspire to as
on.
like a young teenage boy, you know?
Yeah. Oh, and what was Waterford? I hear that
Waterford.
name
So,
bounded about.
yeah, so Waterford Precision Cycles was a bike manufacturer in Waterford, Wisconsin.
Okay.
They were part of Schwinn, but when Schwinn went bankrupt in '89 and they had to sell off all their stuff, the employees of Waterford bought the bike plant from them, and they were the ones that were making the high end bikes for their Schwinn's like race teams, you know.
Yeah.
And we had got in touch with them and convinced them that they should make our BMX bike. And it was funny. I remember we went up there and they had the original Sting jig, the original jig for the first Schwinn Sting, like sitting there. And that's what the first standards were made on, was the first Schwinn Sting jig.
No way.
Yeah, like the first true BMX bike. And so Waterford made high end bikes. So when they started making our bikes, these things were beautiful. Like they had beautiful welds. They could do them in any color you could think of. They could do all this stuff, you know, but it was expensive.
Yeah.
But whatever, like there was an investment to riding a standard, right? Like when you buy Red Wing, like when you buy Red Wing boots versus you buy Timberland boots, like you're going to pay, you know, $150 more for the Red Wings, but guess what? You'll be giving them to your kids.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah.
And that's how we looked at it, because we thought it was a ripoff that the bike companies were making you buy a new bike every couple of months because you wanted to ride bikes. And we thought, well, how about just pay for 2 bikes basically, and you can ride it for the next 3 years.
Yeah.
And the only reason people got rid of their bikes is just because they wanted a new one.
Yeah, that's nice, all right.
That was our mentality, you know.
Yeah.
It wasn't such a disposable economy then, you know.
Who made them before Waterford? Was there another frame company?
It wasn't a frame company. It was just a little machine shop in Iowa that was doing them.
And how long was they making them before it changed
Not
to
long.
Waterford?
I don't even.
Yeah?
You'd have to ask Rick, but I don't remember that exactly. But I don't think they made more than 5 or 6 frames before we got out of there and went to Waterford, because they just had no clue what they were doing, because they were used to making machine parts, you know.
Yeah.
Not a
virtually
precision,
none. Yeah.
Not a precision instrument. I mean, they built the first, you know, frame and it was fine, you know, but to build a production of it, no. So
so Waterford. I always heard that name a lot back in the day. Waterford.
Yeah,
wasn't really sure what it was.
They also made amazing road bikes too. Like they really, really. I mean, these guys loved bike riding. You could just feel it when you walked in there.
What happened to them? Are they gone?
I had left by the time. That's at some point Rick and them split, and Rick decided to make his own machine shop. So,
but do you know if Waterford is still going?
Don't know.
Okay, I'll have a look later on. And then, so you were doing like the graphics, the ads, all of that stuff, the T-shirts,
stickers, banners, the videos. I was editing all the videos.
You edited the videos as well?
Mm-hmm.
What was the some of the other companies? Did you look at any other BMX companies for like? Who did you think anyone else was doing it right?
No, we just looked at skate companies.
That's what I was going to say. It looks like you was looking at like some of the skate companies. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. We liked what World Industries was doing, and Blind, and those places. Plus, you know, we're in the American Midwest, and so like Harley Davidson, you know, we like that stuff. You know, Indian motorcycles, military. You know, sort of look and feel. Yeah.
And what did you do? The Cobra graphic?
Yeah, the original.
Yeah, I like that one. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. Yeah, that's one of my favourites of standard.
Yeah, it
What about
got
the
modified. It got modified over the years after I'd left. But yeah, that was the original one. Was mine.
Okay. Oh, what was the 63? What was that relevance?
Kind of like, I don't know if you. I don't remember the relevant. I mean, there might be something more to it than this, but I think it was just like one of those numbers we just kind of liked, like.
Okay.
Like,
because that was on a lot of standard stuff. I remember.
Yeah,
it had
it
like
was.
racing stripe almost. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't remember where it came from. I mean, I think it came from. I mean, there's this old kind of, if you know the lore, your BMX lore, like there's a thing where Eddie Roman had come up with that where he kept seeing the number 43 everywhere.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, and Rick was like, I keep seeing the number 63 everywhere. I don't see 43. I see 63.
Oh, okay.
And then as time went on, we were kind of like, yeah, I kind of see 63 everywhere too. And then I think that's where it just kind of came from, to be honest. It was just kind of that built out of that original lore of the number 43.
All right. How quick did standard seem to like explode at one point? It kind of went. It had like a gradual build at first, and then it just went poof. Right. What period was that? 93 or 94 or something?
That was 92, 93. 92, 93. Yeah. Because we scooped up like all these people from all over the country versus like people just in Southern California or whatever, we had the guys, we had Lucky and Taj and Joe Rich got those guys on from East Coast Destruction. Got the Baco guys on who had a big following, Baco, Bobby Fischer, and we slowly just built like these groups because what we would do is we'd go out and we'd tour a little bit, just riding skate parks and stuff. And whoever was the best rider there, we'd give them stuff. Okay. Because our thing is like, whoever the best rider is at the local spot is who everybody wants to buy what they're riding. Yeah. So Rick and I were very intentional about giving flow, and maybe not sponsoring, but giving flow to like the best local dude.
Yeah.
Like any chance we got. And that really, I think that did a lot too.
Yeah. And it was almost uncharted, the middle of America, like you say. If you pull all them together in one company, you're covering a lot of ground there, right? So
because I remember like all of a sudden we had Japanese, German, and UK distributors calling us up, and at first, I did a lot of the shipping, so I would be packaging up axles and pegs and some t-shirts and just throwing it in a box and send it off, and then all of a sudden, like within like 6 or 8 months, like it was a full-time job. I was making multiple trips out to UPS a day.
Yeah.
And then that's when we like reinvested into even more soft goods. That's when we invested money and gave money to Chris and Marco to start props, because we wanted to start props, but Chris and them were like, you can't be a company starting it, otherwise nobody's gonna. It's like if GT started BMX Action Magazine, you'd be like, yeah. So, but we gave them money to get off the ground, so we started doing all that kind of investing, and so that's where props came from and stuff. So,
okay, I heard that you had some sort of involvement in that. Was the props guys like the kind of part of the Baco crew, or?
Yep.
Okay,
yeah.
All right.
Yeah. If you watch the Baco documentary, I'm in there a bunch because I wasn't a core member of the Baco crew, but I was a part of. Okay. I rode with Dave and Chad tons.
Often, yeah. So, okay.
Yeah, Dave was just here in town a couple months ago. We went to lunch together. It was nice.
Oh, nice. Is he still right?
I don't know. Maybe a little bit.
I can imagine he's sort of someone who can't give it
camping
up.
A lot.
Okay.
He's very big into camping. he goes to a lot of
Would
music
you-
stuff.
Okay. Would you say like that when the STA came out, that's when the kind of explosion happened?
Oh yeah,
Or
that
was
was
it-
huge because it crossed.
That was like the normal frame sort of.
Yeah, because it crossed into dirt jumping.
Yeah.
So just out of the street, flatland thing, like that now became something that dirt riders, even some racers were very interested in, and vert riders and stuff. So it really kind of started to spread out. And then that's because Rick was originally a racer. You know, he was a top,
right,
he was a top, amateur in the country before he got into. So racing has always been a part of his thing. So he always wanted to get into racing, and so the STA was kind of that bridge, to start moving over into it. And then, to your point, like it became a modern version of a freestyle bike where you kind of left the platforms and gussets and things kind of fade away. And
that's what it looked like happened at that point. What was
slightly different geometry.
What was the other bike code grief that was going on at the time? I remember you guys had some sort of conflict with, was it Hoffman and S&M or both?
Yeah.
Like all the three brands were like butting heads at one of the contests. What was that?
Yeah. Honestly,
obviously you're going back to when you were kids virtually. So this is all with it's good to look back with hindsight and laugh at this stuff for me, I think, which is what I believe adults do. But what was that about?
Just talking shit. I mean,
shit talking,
just shit talking. I mean, some of it, from our end, some of it was a little bit performative, a little bit wrestling, like we wanted to make it bigger than it actually was. Like I didn't ever have a personal problem with any of those guys. Like we would screw with, because it wasn't even just the stuff you saw. Like me and some of the guys in the warehouse, like we would fax Steve Swope at like Hoffman Bikes, like crazy shit all day long. Like, like we just send rude images and just terrible stuff. Like, like just messing with each other. We just F with each other all the time. Like, and there was, there was a feeling of like, if there's, to me, it was like, if there wasn't rivalries, there wasn't innovation, Yeah. Like if it was all kumbaya, like nobody was pushing to be better than other people and stuff. And I grew up with a lot of these types of guys, that would bully you, like, and so me, like, to use, a UK phrase, I was taking the piss out of them a bit,
Oh yeah.
Like you think you're hot shit, you're not hot shit.
What did you think when S&M brought out the heavy as fuck, which was like a blatant jibe at standard? I thought.
Yeah, I thought it was great. We thought, well, good luck making any money.
Yeah.
Because the joke was, I mean, they just basically built the same bike, and it was all the things that they had given us shit about, right? It was heavier, it cost twice as much, and all this stuff. And so I was like, who's the joke on?
Yeah.
Like, you got to sell the things. I don't have to sell them.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, man. The platform went back on as well. Yeah.
Sure did. I thought, and again, like that was my point. Like, if you're gonna go that far to like,
you've made this dispute into a product.
Yeah, like once you're starting to get recognized by Moeller, like I was like, oh, we've made it. Like, like this is actually a good thing. And
what was the what tours outside of the US did you guys go on? Because I remember when you came to the UK with Joe Rich.
Yeah, Joe and Chad.
Yeah, you did like a little sort of couple of stops around the UK, which looked quite fun actually.
It was such a blast.
And then ended up at Southsea at the King of Concrete.
Yep. So much fun. I mean, yeah, I was really nervous when I first got there because nobody would talk to me, you know? Like nobody would talk to me. Like, you know, John did, you know.
What was going on there then?
I don't know. It was weird. Like, I mean, I also didn't realize I was on the deck too by a bunch of Germans, which, you know,
okay,
they don't have much of a sense of humor, you know.
Yeah.
My family's very German.
All right.
And so, you know, they weren't really mixing it up much, and the English guys were very quiet. But of course, you know, there was like the one Scottish guy, John, who was just loud as hell, and he was very nice.
All right.
And then I started riding, and people were quiet, and then I remember the contest started. And then all of a sudden, everybody was like cheering and yelling, and like it was weird.
Yeah. Interesting.
I don't know. I don't know if it was. I don't know what it was.
Who was you with? You was Tim Ruck drove you guys around.
He did.
I think you went to Oxford.
The poor guy. The poor guy.
Was he the only English guy?
Yeah. Yeah, he had to deal with us.
Okay.
We were not easy to deal with.
Okay.
He was trying to be, you know, very proper and, you know, very polite, and we were just a bunch of assholes, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun though. But that's the thing, like I don't know, maybe you know, because I was on the, you know, because I remember like sitting on the deck and like riding and stuff, and like I didn't know if like people must not know who we are or something, you know, otherwise they probably say hello or something, you know what I mean? Like I think they but then I found out later like that wasn't the case at all. Like everybody knew who we were.
Yeah. No, I remember not many people knew Joe Rich was.
No. But they remembered after that.
Really knew. Yeah. After that, they remembered. But they knew you and Chad. Yeah. Which is weird. Yeah. But yeah, that was a good trip. Yeah. What was that? A week?
Yeah, it was just about a week. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because we went South on Sea, and then we went to like Oxford,
Leon Sea.
We spent a little time in London.
Okay. You got Romford, big concrete skate park, or just outside London?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I thought Tim would take you there. Yeah.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah. Still there.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I still got pictures from there too.
Excellent.
I think it's great. Yeah, no, that was a great trip because I'd never been to London. I'd never been overseas before. And Mira was there, and he was, you know, we went out to eat with him, and he was just great. You know, he's always fun because he was coming around Rampage a ton back then because he was, you know, Rick was trying to talk him into coming on Standard.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. Well, him and Rick bonded a lot because they were both really into Mustangs, you know.
All right.
And but Mira was really considering coming on to Standard, and then then he was on Hoffman or whatever, you know, or whatever it was.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, I think Hoffman could just offer more money because they were doing shows, and so Dave had to do shows. At Standard, we didn't do shows. You know, we didn't do tours. You know,
I think at that point he'd gone from Hoffman to Haro, right?
Very close after that, yeah.
Yeah. I think he was only briefly.
Yep.
And then so at this kind of point in time, you've started doing like the free coast, not free coast, the backwards stuff, right?
Yeah, right.
And that,
yeah,
like,
right around the time.
That became like a big. You basically did almost everything, right? Like,
yeah. Well, it all started back.
backwards.
It started way back at Rampage in like '91 because, Rick was doing where he'd just do like a 180 or front wheel 180, and then he'd roll back up and he'd do like a Canadian nose pick and go back in. And so, I could never, I couldn't at the time, like I couldn't like just do that. Like, so, but I try and whatever. And then like, when we finally got to the next Rampage, the way it was set up was where you could get a lot more speed going backwards towards the ramps. There was always a much bigger ramp facing a much smaller ramp at that park, right? And so, that's when I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, I remember Rick doing that. I do the nose pick thing, and whatever. And then I started realizing like, oh, well, I bet you could do this and I bet you could do that. And then, and then I would sometimes dream up tricks and go there like in the middle of the night. So like one night, like I was laying in bed and I was thinking, I bet you could jump over the spine and land in an ice pick and then jump back over. And then I just drove down there, turned the lights on and made that up that night, like jump over an ice pick and all that stuff.
That's yours as well, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yep. That was like 92.
That must have been, that was before the fakie stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And then I just kept like, trying to go faster backwards, like, need to get the ramp, so I'd start moving the ramp closer to the thing so I could get going faster. And then I realized like, oh crap, I could totally jump this, and I could backwards 180, I could backwards 360 it, I could backwards to like all the tricks that I do, and then backwards to hurricane, like you had mentioned, like doing that stuff. And at the time, everybody was just kind of like, that's cool, but it seemed more like, I don't know, sideshowy kind of.
Yeah. Like it's cool, but we're not going to make a thing of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And then I remember going to the Chicago contest and, the Chicago BS contest or Hoffman contest. And, it was me and Mira and Miron and Dennis and a bunch of other people in the mini ramp competition. And I remember like they were dropping in, they were just going nuts over the spine. Like they were flipping the spine at that time. And I remember jumping in and like, I 180'd the spine and then went back up and did a 360 nose pick backwards, and the place exploded. Like I'd never heard it so loud after doing a trick in my entire career. Like the whole place just blew up, and I was so confused. I thought that one of those fuckers had dropped in on me and did a trick over the spine while I was. That's literally what I thought.
Okay.
And then when I got up back to the top of the spine, I realized I was the only person on the ramp. And like Lucky was on the top, just like blah, like going nuts and stuff. And like that's when it just all of a sudden it kind of turned into like, oh, this is a thing. Yeah, this is a thing now. And then not long after that is when I went to Cologne, when I went to Germany for a contest, and I did a bunch of stuff there and came up with a bunch of things like the Miami Hopper nose pick, the bar spin, out and stuff like that. So like just kept trying to invent new tricks, which is funny because like there's a bunch of those I don't see. Nobody does any of this stuff, so it always makes me feel bad. Like maybe it's not cool tricks,
The the sort of seat grab, the like Miami Hopper sort of nose pick to half bar spin.
Yeah, the full bar spin.
Nice looking trip. The full bar spin, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know if I've seen that one.
I did half bar spins, and then I went to Germany, and Chad was like, "Why don't you throw the bars all the way?" And I was like, "I can't." And he's like, "Just do it, you pussy." And
was you in Hamburg? Not Cologne, Hamburg.
Sorry, Hamburg.
I was there. I was at that contest.
Were you? Yeah.
Yeah.
I got some. There's some clips on my Instagram.
Okay.
It's just KRTS is the Instagram name.
All right.
There's some clips from that there.
Oh, when you was talking about the over ice, had you seen over to pegs first, or?
Oh yeah, people were doing over to pegs. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I wondered that. Yeah.
But nobody was like doing over to tooth or over to ice, like.
No. Okay.
And even then, when they were doing over to pegs, they weren't jumping back in or doing anything else. Because when I first learned jump over to ice, like your momentum just kept you going fakie. So that's how I just did, like I kept, and everybody's like, "Whoa, that's crazy."
Yeah. I think over to ice and back is the easier way, I think, for personally, because you don't have to change your weight. Like you just.
Yeah, but for me, see, because like I was when I was making it up, like I'd never done it before, so I was scared. So I jump and I just keep my weight, going with me.
Yeah, you're overcommitting. Like,
yeah, I'm overcommitting.
Because it's new. Like you don't realize you can just kind of cheat.
Yeah, Jumping over to ice and back over was more scary to me.
Yeah. I would say that's just because you're landing full on, like. Upright instead of being in there. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. No, it was good times. Yeah, I enjoyed that. But yeah, like that's, the attitude got weird around that time because as I was trying to like, or anybody like Joe, Taj, any of those guys, like, when, we would if we were just riding and having a good time, like it was no big deal. But there was an attitude and a culture around there that like if you were trying too hard, like that was weird.
All right.
So like, if you were kind of in like contest mode, like people would give you shit.
Okay.
And so it got kind of weird to push yourself. Because if you did, like people thought like you were showing off,
Yeah.
And it's funny because it's like I'm on a BMX bike jumping in the air. What else am I doing here other than showing off?
I think that was a theme that ran through the whole scene though, worldwide, because we had that as well.
I would agree. Yeah.
You can be good, but don't be too good. Like
right. No.
Yeah. Like
no, you're 100% right. That became a thing because like I remember. I would just have to pull tricks out of my ass sometimes in a contest because I couldn't practice them around people,
Yeah. I'd say that for sure. But that's like looking back now. I'd say that was just being young and somebody's
100%.
They're just edging over the top of you, and you're like, fuck. So
but that was the difference, though, because but if you were in North Carolina with Ryan and Dave, or were in Oklahoma with those guys, like they were practicing the same trick over and over and over and over and over and over and over to get it down to where they could string them together in a contest and win the contest. But we weren't riding that way,
Yeah.
And so. And I'm not to say one's better than the other. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying it's different. Because if I would have been riding that way, which to be honest, I wasn't that into the idea of it, but you would have gotten shit for it, like, you would have been seen as a show off,
So that's sort of athlete style of doing it. Which, like you say, is not wrong or right. It's just different. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just different. Like I said, different sport, and I can appreciate it for what it is. The X Games stuff. Who's that guy? Who's the crazy jumper guy? Ryan.
I don't even watch that stuff. I don't know.
No, there's a guy, he does like crazy front flip where he throws the bike up in the air and the bike spins and then he grabs it and like whatever. Like these guys, like I mean, to me, it's not the same sport as what you see like a Garrett Reynolds or somebody doing, like very different.
Yeah.
Or a Terry Adams or,
Yeah. It's not, that's when you start getting overcomplicated. I lose interest in it. It's just like, don't even know what's going on. Like, it doesn't look appealing to the eyes. Like I look at that stuff and I'm like, I wouldn't even want to be doing that. Like I want to see riding that. I want to be in that position doing that. Like that's what appeals to me,
Yeah, well, it kind of goes back to like that first time I saw a guy doing back wheel hops. Like I want it to look like magic, and that's
exactly.
That's why the backwards stuff really was attractive to me because, it would just kind of mess with people, like, wait a second, like what? Like,
tips on its head, right?
Yeah. Like,
did you ever like jump the spine completely backwards, like, without turning? I don't think I've ever seen that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I just like the turning better. I mean, there's
the turning looks better. Like I would visualizing just jumping a spine backwards. I think
there's a ton of tricks that
turning look like the way to do it, like a half cab sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, it depended on if you were a regular foot or goofy foot too. Like that would impact how you do it. But I mean, there's a ton of tricks that I never got on film that I did over that. Stuff like. I mean, I was able to 360 that thing, like air to bar spin over it, tail whip backwards, like all that stuff it's just anything you could kind of do in a jump. It's all better how much speed you got. And then when I left standard and I moved back home, there was a skate park that was local where these guys had a 6-foot spine. And then there was a 8-foot quarter with a 4-foot box on top of it. And so that was amazing because I could abubaka on top of the 4-foot box on the 8-foot quarter, come hammering down and hit the 6-foot thing. Like that was crazy. Like that's when like
gnarly setup.
It was a gnarly setup, but it was super, super fun. I think there's a picture of me on Instagram, like doing an abubaka on that 12-foot extension. But I was only doing the it's funny, people taking pictures of the abubaka, but I was only doing it so I could get speed to
go backwards over the spine,
backwards over the 6-foot spine because it's a big spine, 6 foot.
Yeah.
But like that also, again, that was a place where like nobody was filming and stuff. Like it wasn't that kind of place, like, there was, I think you're right. There was kind of an air of like, don't be a show off for a while,
Yeah, 100%. And what do you know? What era did you step away from standard then?
Yeah, so 94, 95.
Oh, quite early, yeah.
Yeah, 95. Okay.
95, it must have been.
Yeah, 95.
Yeah, Hamburg was 95, so yeah.
Was it? Been, oh, okay, yeah. So
sure.
then it would have been like within that next year after that, yeah.
Okay. And what do you know what happened when all those guys quit standard?
Not a ton.
Like Joe, there's a bunch of Ron Kimler, maybe. Like a bunch of people just left.
I mean, I know a lot of people wanted to get paid for riding.
Okay.
And we weren't paying people to ride.
Okay.
That was, from my understanding, that was pretty much the bottom line. And like
those guys
Rick
were young as well. So.
Yeah, like some guys were getting paid that had like signature bikes, right? Like the Shaman and but Rick was going to do Ribco, which was going to be a bike company just for Joe and Taj and Lucky, and that never got off the ground.
I remember the stickers.
Yeah, and then that was, I mean, that was going to be a thing, and then I don't know exactly because I had left kind
Oh,
of
you was already
before.
gone.
Yeah, before a lot of those guys had fully gone, but not long before. Yeah.
Okay. And Standard was still thriving then when you went.
Yeah, it was doing great.
Yeah, because it went on to continue doing good up until years and years. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So why did you leave?
Yeah. Well, number one, so my father had gotten diagnosed with Parkinson's,
Oh, okay.
and I, I was going back pretty regularly, back home, and when he got diagnosed with Parkinson's, like I was like, I need to be around home more. Like my father's always been my hero in my life,
Yeah.
growing up. And so I was like, I'm gonna move back. I'm gonna move back home and do this. And at the time, we had like email and cell phones and stuff, right? And I was like, we can make this work, Rick, And he was like, I don't know if that'll work. And I was like, well, I'm going,
Yeah.
And then after about, I don't know, almost a year, like we just kind of stopped talking to each other, and I stopped going down there. And then I was just, I had gotten really into design, right? So I decided I was going to go to school for design.
All right.
And so I went to school for visual communications, and got a degree. And around that time, like Rick had to consolidate a bunch of the companies because the skate park was a insurance liability for the bike shop or the skate shop and the bike company, but he couldn't do it because like I was a full partner. And so my dad and me negotiated with them for a buyout, got bought out. And then not long after I graduated from college, I went back down there, and then I started doing some design stuff again for
All right.
probably another year or so. I started doing t-shirts and things, and that's when we did Rolling on the River. I filmed and edited that.
Okay.
And then after that, I had gotten married, and then I was kind of done with my BMX traveling days. So.
All right. And so what, you moved back to where you are now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You still got a bike?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. It's in the garage. Got a Sunday.
Amazing. I assumed you would still have. Yeah. You're one of those people that, to me, you seem like you have to have a bike at some point. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No,
Yeah,
it would be weird not to have a bike. Like that's, even if the bike's not working, like it's agitating to me,
Okay.
Like, so the bike.
How often does it get used?
I don't know. Once a month, maybe more, a little bit. I mean, it depends on my boys. Like if I want to impress them a little bit, or if I've got some free time. But it's harder and harder to find people that can help me with the coaster part of it.
Oh, yeah.
Like I took it to a bike shop local to here, and they looked at me like I was an alien when I walked in, because it's all mountain bike guys now, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's no BMX guys, and so they're looking at you like, what
is this? Yeah.
What is this crap? And every once in a while, like you can find a place that's got like a gray haired guy, and you're like, hey, and he's like, oh yeah, I know what to do, because like you still like, like I don't know how to weld, so like I have to take it somewhere to get the arm welded,
Yeah.
And like you don't just pop a coaster on, like you can't do that, that.
Yeah.
The audience that's listening might not.
Did you? I don't know if you did. You watch? So I've interviewed Todd Anderson and Maurice Mayer, and they talk about coasters.
Maurice,
they're coaster fans. Yeah, And Todd was going on about he's making a titanium one. You seen that?
No, good luck
Yeah.
though.
Yeah.
Good luck.
That's what he was saying. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I still have I still have the chromoly standard shell that we built years ago. It still is fantastic,
Amazing.
Yeah, just got to replace the guts. Like, yeah, I've heard people talk because I did a KHE free coaster for a while. I did the guys at Flatland Fuel or whatever hooked me up with some stuff, and yeah, and but nowadays, yeah, I was never a very good bike mechanic. I was,
Yeah, okay.
I was always used to say, like, I'm like an IndyCar driver. I don't change the tires. I drive the car.
Oh, excellent.
Like, I wasn't very good bike mechanic. Like, that's why Rick was like the guy for all the bike stuff. Like I was just, I was the brand. I was the brand and graphics and like PR guy.
Yeah.
So
he was the mechanics. Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
So what do you think like kept you in BMX for all them years? Like, especially the dead era. Like so the dead era sounded like that was when you was getting most out of it. Like, you rode for Haro and stuff, like a weird trajectory there. So what do you think kept you in it? Because it was like pretty hard being a BMX rider in them days.
It was not easy. I don't think it's much easier nowadays, but it was just, you're always surprised. There was always something new. And it wasn't just like a little bit new, like it was big new,
Yeah.
Like
it was changing. Yeah.
It was
changing.
Yeah, it was like big new, and it wasn't just bigger and higher and more tail whips, Like,
a completely different look would come along, wouldn't it? You'd be like, oh, I didn't realize that could happen.
Completely different look, a completely different way to like to maneuver. Plus my body, I was getting stronger and I could do different things with my bike that I could never have done 5 or 6 years before, because now I had all the muscle mass and things, like, so, it was just always new. It was ever changing. So you could never there was no coasting. There was no like, all right, I'm good.
Like, okay.
Like,
Yeah, good until the next video or magazine, and then you're like, oh, it's changed again.
Yeah, exactly. And look at all that stuff that I need to, learn or do differently. Or then there'd be new types of ramps that people would make, like that's when like everybody was testing different things. And that's when like, Nate Wessel started to like get involved in like Woodward, and like they were building all this weird shit, and like that started pushing things. So it wasn't even just like the riding and the culture. It was just like the whole foundation would change, it was just like,
everything. It would all change like from year to year as well. Like,
oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. Cause one year, everybody's got short bars. The next year, like, people only have like one peg. Like, and then it was all of a sudden people would have 4 pegs and stuff, right? But right now, like, I feel like it's been stagnant for so long. It's like nobody has brakes, nobody has pegs. No, it's like the most pure BMX sort of experience. No frills, no nothing, which then kind of gives you a no frills sort of, experience,
Yeah.
Versus like my bike has 3 brakes on it.
There's a lot of frills. Brakes. Yeah.
There's a ton of frills, man. Oh yeah. When I show up at a park, let alone just getting over the fact that I'm some old guy, but the fact that I got front brakes, because they don't know what a coaster brake is. So they don't even know, like, they just figure I'm not backpedaling. But when they see a front brake, they're like, whoa, that's weird.
There's a lot of people with back breaks now. Like a few years back, there wasn't many.
I've been seeing that. Yeah, I just watched like the Battle of Hastings or something videos on YouTube. I saw some dudes with back breaks there.
There's a lot of back breaks in this area. It's 50-50.
Is it? Wow, that's actually
more
huge.
With breaks, more with breaks than without, I'd say, in the area that I'm in. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, there's a lot of sort of trail and bowl scene here, so that kind of makes sense, you know.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's been like I said, it's been that way for a while. I haven't, like it's been since the early 2000s where people like dumped their seat post and started dumping their brakes.
Well, that's another thing that's come up. Is seat post heights has gone up as well.
Thank goodness.
It's regional. This is all like you might see something there that's completely not the same as what I see here, but. Yeah, I noticed that a lot of people now got seat posts as well, which is nice to see.
Good, because then they can finally sit down while they roll back, which is the proper way to do a rollback. Okay? I'm just going to say it right now. The standing up stuff looks weird.
Oh, man.
Don't like it. But again, if you don't have a seat to sit on, I understand why you stand up when you do a rollback.
Yeah.
Fully rollbacks, kids.
I only think you need to like roll back to snap out. Like that's my theory. Like roll back, snap out quick. Like that's fine. Yeah,
ride that shit anyway. out the road. Like just again, like okay, sorry, but I'm old man yelling at a cloud here. Okay, but like there was people like in the Battle of Hastings, which I just watched, which must have just happened recently. Like there's guys doing flyouts and doing hang fives. Like all around the platforms and all this stuff, and then doing a big trick at the end and stuff. Like and they're doing nose wheelies and all this stuff. It's like, do that backwards. Like do right. Like who's that guy who I really like? Felix. He does some backwards stuff. He's great. That guy.
Yeah, I'm not even sure who that is.
Felix Frendenberg. He's German
or something. Okay,
yeah, that's it. Yeah, he's great. Yeah. He does some innovative stuff. Like he reminds me of me when I was younger. Like
what about the hang five around the skate park though? To me, that's like nah. Nah.
I mean, it's a skill. It's a skill. It's a trick. Okay, but again, but people.
Do we need to know you can do it that far?
I don't know. I mean. I don't know. I mean, that, but again, back to my point, like that was a super cool trick in 89, Yeah,
totally. Yeah. But
like that was a badass trick.
That's like,
but to people now, it's new. But to all those people now, that's a new trick. They've never seen that before.
I always got that theory of like what you're saying, get on and get off, make it snappy. Don't hop, don't pedal. Just get on and get off. Like
you would have really enjoyed hanging out with us in Iowa. I'll tell you that. You would have really enjoyed it.
I figured
you just sit there with your clipboard, like
No way. You would probably had some fun at my expense too.
You check the boxes. I don't know. Yeah.
So anyway, let me So what is your favorite era so far of BMX?
Oh, man. I mean, my favorite era is always going to be like the early days just because it was so glossy, like, with the, the first freestyling magazine and late BMX action magazines when Bob Haro was still riding and RL and Wilton were driving around in a Porsche 911 with a bike rack on it.
Moon days. I thought you were going to say 90s.
No, I mean that is cool, but I lived it.
Yeah.
But like if I was going to hang a poster on my wall, it wouldn't be a poster of Taj, even though that'd probably be the raddest picture, right? But it would be a poster of like Rich Segur, like in Del Mar skate park with like the full gear, the full kit on.
Crazy.
Or Tony Murray or, like there was a shine and stuff back then that just was just so attractive to me as a kid, right? Because like, and don't get me wrong, like I get into, like, I think it's funny, like they have that mud fest in Florida and stuff, right? Where they're like, they're literally like riding in mud pits for an entire day. Like that's cool. Like I go and watch that stuff, but like my favorite stuff is that cheesy Rad, the movie.
Okay. The stuff you probably laughed at when you started doing standard, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%. We laughed our asses off at them. Look at those idiots. Look at them wearing uniforms and stuff. You know?
Yeah.
But it's still, there's something about like, you know, when you're 12 years old and you get that new BMX Action magazine and you're flipping through and you see like, you know, how cool.
It goes in, doesn't it? Like that's when you're first discovering the whole world of it as well. Like,
yeah, that's why you see like all these old guys on like Harley Davidsons, or they've got like old cars, because that's what they had on their walls when they were kids, you know. And that's what I had on my walls when I was kids. I had pictures of Greg Hill, you know, and Harry Leary, God rest his soul, he just passed away.
R.I.P.
And all those guys, like Toby Henderson, Tim Judge, right? Like Tim Judge is the guy, you know. Like the only thing that's come close to like pictures of Tim Judge is that famous picture of Vic Murphy, which is still probably one of my favorite BMX pictures ever taken, of him doing a table off of that.
The curb, yeah.
Like that to me, that is like, that's the most purest form of BMX is in that photo.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, but what I was actually getting at with the get on and off, you did perfectly with the Hurricane, right? You're on and you're off. That's
on
it.
And off.
Snappy.
That's right.
Kept it snappy. You're in the ramp. You good, yeah, man. That's a good example. You actually painted a good example yourself. So that was all part of the doing the stuff, right? Because like, there was no like extra showing off, like, you know, like hopping and stuff like that. Like, every once in a while you'd hop, but that's probably because you were in a contest and, you know, your nerves are getting to you, you know? Yeah. Well, sometimes you just hop because that's what happens. But ultimately,
but you know, but you and everybody else around you had an understanding of like, you know, that was like 99% there, you know?
Yeah, man.
You know?
All right, man.
I appreciate you taking the time.
If you're good, and I really enjoyed listening to your story. Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks for listening. We've got a Patreon page, so if you could show us any support, we'd be most grateful. The link's below. A lot of work goes into these shows, so anything you could do would be much appreciated. Thank you.